Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. Quite a few people have been asking us what is our withdrawal strategy? That is, how do we withdraw money from our corpus on an annual basis to sustain our lifestyle and expenses? So in this video, I will detail out the different methods or strategies that exist of withdrawing money from your corpus during your retirement years, their pros and cons, and what we've chosen and why. So hopefully this will help you calibrate your plans accordingly and also determine your strategy based on our real life practical experiences. Before I do that, two requests. One is I would suggest to watch this video rather than listen to it, because there's a little bit more of Excel sheets and simulations, etc. in this video. It'll be a lot more useful by watching. The second is, if you've not done already, please do subscribe to the channel, and more importantly, do send us your requests or comments and topics that you would like us to cover based on our experiences. You could do that in the comment section of the video or reach out directly on the email provided in our channel details. So let's first start by understanding why a withdrawal strategy is needed or why it is important during retirement. Well, while you're in your working years, you have a salary that comes to your bank account on a monthly basis. You use that salary to sustain your expenses, and whatever is left over, you put it for savings or investments, etc. But when you're retired, there is no more salary. To sustain your expenses, you have to withdraw bits and pieces of your portfolio or your corpus on a monthly and an annual basis, and or maybe use your passive income that your corpus generates to sustain your expenses. What or how you withdraw that could either put on one end of the spectrum, make you run out of money, or on the other end of the spectrum, leave too much money behind than you planned or desired to. So having a good withdrawal strategy is helpful to have that glide path of not running out of money and at the same time not leaving behind too much wealth and money. Now, there are two key components of a good withdrawal strategy. The first one is how much to withdraw, and the second is how to withdraw. Now, for the first component, we've addressed this in many of our videos where we talked about the withdrawal rate at which you withdraw money. By rule of thumb, our suggestion is always to use 3% of your overall target corpus as your withdrawal rate, or 3% and below as your withdrawal rate to sustain your expenses. And if you don't know your corpus yet and you know your target or desired expenses, you can flip that equation and you take your target or desired expenses and you multiply that by 33 or 35, a factor of that. That will give you your target corpus needed to sustain your expenses. For the second part, that is what we're going to cover, or at least I'll try and cover in this video, which is how to withdraw. And to do that, let's take 4 key levers that are important in this withdrawal strategy, and let's put some values to each of these levers. So the first one is corpus. We are going to assume 1 CR or 10 million as the value of the corpus for the sake of simulation. It could be in INR, EUR, USD, doesn't matter, because it doesn't change the simulations as such. The second lever is the return on your corpus. We're going to assume 7% return. To keep it simple, we'll just assume a linear return rather than a real return, which could be in some years 10%, some years minus 10, plus 20, etc. But just for simplicity's sake, we will keep 7% year on year. As a side note, my request would be that you should watch the video sequence of returns that I did, where I talk about how the sequence in which you get your returns can also have an impact on your withdrawal strategy in future. The third lever is expenses. We're going to assume that 3% of your corpus as expenses. So in case of 1 CR or the 10 million, it is 3 lakhs or 300,000. Again, doesn't matter whichever currency you plan to use these simulations towards. And the last is the inflation, rate of inflation on a yearly basis. We're going to assume 7% because this is not just your regular inflation, but also lifestyle inflation, in which you will increase your expenses year in year. Hopefully, it'll be less than 7% in many of the years, but let's just assume flat 7% for the rest of the lifetime. And we'll assume 30 years of your retirement period. Again, you can stretch it for more years, but just for the simulation sake, we're going to use 30 years as a simulation. Now, with these levers done, let's look at the three types of withdrawal strategies, the pros and cons. The first one is the fixed withdrawal strategy, that you fix your expenses on day one and then you apply inflation on that expenses every year and you withdraw that money. So in this case, we've used 3% as a withdrawal rate. So 3 lakhs or 300,000 becomes your expenses of day one. And every year on this one, you will apply the 7% inflation rate that we are assuming, and you can simulate that. Now, the positive thing of this simulation is that this is what I would say, the cookie cutter FIRE playbook simulation. So this is the typical FIRE philosophy simulation. The second thing is that this simulation, at least for 30 years, doesn't let you run out of money, as you can see with the 7% rate of return on and 7% inflation. However, the negative thing is that it is heavily dependent on these two levers, which is the inflation rate and the rate of return. Because even if you make that inflation rate from 7% to 8%, you will see that you will run out of money. Similarly, if you make the inflation 6% and your returns at 8%, you will see that you'll be left with a lot more money. So these two levers have a big impact. And you can see that how your withdrawal rate in year one is 3%, but by the end of the lifetime, or at least the end of the 30 years of the simulation, it really exponentially rises to a massive withdrawal rate. So personally, we think that this is too simplistic a solution for applying towards a withdrawal strategy. The second option is the variable withdrawal strategy. That unlike the first option where you have a fixed expenses and every year you apply inflation to this one, here you have variable expenses. That is that you use the 3% that you've used as your withdrawal rate. So in year one, 300,000 or 3 lakhs. And you keep that 3% flat or constant for your lifetime or the future years. So that means that as your portfolio increases or decreases, your expenses increase or decreases. So the good news in this particular scenario is that you will never run out of money, even if you keep retired for 100 odd years. Why? Because you're only withdrawing 3% of that particular year's portfolio that you have. So you'll always have some amount because you're just withdrawing 3% of whatever portfolio you have. But the bad news is that it will make your expenses go haywire each year. Because some years you live like a king, because if your portfolio goes up by 20%, you'll have a lot more money in form of 3%. But some years you'll be having a very frugal life or a very minimal life, because if the portfolio goes down by 20-25%, then you'll only be having 3% of that particular value of that particular year. So this scenario, though theoretically foolproof from a portfolio perspective, but it's very impractical from a daily or a monthly or an annual living expenses perspective. Because keep in mind that if some years, if your portfolio or the returns go dramatically down, you may not even be able to sustain your fixed expenses and you may need to take a loan, etc. The third approach is what I call the passive income withdrawal strategy. That you do not touch your portfolio, but you only use your passive income that your portfolio generates towards your expenses. So in this particular scenario, the good news is that it doesn't matter if your portfolio is growing by 6%, 7%, as long as your passive income is sustaining your expenses, the rate of return becomes irrelevant. The second good news is that in this particular scenario is that you will always be left with certain amount of value, because you will have some portfolio because you're only using your passive income to sustain your expenses. Typically, this passive income could be a combination of your pension, your unit link insurance plans that you have, some committed returns that you get on a yearly basis for 10, 20 years, whatever. It could be a mix of your rental that you may have on property, etc. This particular scenario is mostly used generally by people who are on pension plans because they are using their pension as their passive income or as to sustain their living expenses. So the good thing of this particular scenario or this particular strategy is that you will have money to give to your future children or any form of inheritance you may have. You may not run out of money, but the bad news is that you may have to work a lot more longer to be able to be eligible to that pension or have that level of passive income that sustains you, unless you are in a situation where you've already built real estate empire, etc., that you have enough passive income that is being generated. In our case, personally, we do not have enough passive income. We did not have, we've retired early and we did not have enough pensions also, that this was not an option for us anyways. So what have we chosen? We've not chosen any of the three. What we've done instead is that we've taken the certain ingredients or the best parts of those ingredients from all the three and made our own hybrid strategy. So what we've done is that from the first one, the fixed income strategy, we've taken the concept of that we've taken our expenses on day one and we are applying inflation every year on that particular expenses. From the second one, what we've done is that we've used that second strategy to put guardrails on our expense every year. So if our portfolio goes high, then we also give ourselves rewards and we splurge a little bit. And if our portfolio goes low, what we've done is that we have a good understanding of our fixed expenses, our discretionary expenses, and our lifestyle expenses. So we cut down dramatically, or we plan to cut down dramatically on those discretionary and lifestyle expenses if need be, that if we touch that guardrail or a minimum threshold that we think that below which we don't want to reduce our expenses, but we have certain flat on that one. So for example, when I talk about discretionary expenses, that every year we are doing a world trip, we are traveling, we are having a set of experiences, etc. So if in certain particular years we realize that our portfolio or our target portfolio is going down, then we will potentially reduce that level of trips for those particular years. Fortunately, for the last 2 years, the markets have been good, so we have not been in a situation. The bad news of this particular way of doing things is that it makes our portfolio management or our expense management as well as our withdrawal strategy a lot more complex. But the good news is it makes it a lot more practical because we are using certain part of our income through passive income, what we have for our expenses that helps us plan the cash flow. We have those guardrails that if our expenses are, if the returns go below a certain level, then we will cut down 10 to 20% of our expenses. And if it goes above, then we will also have a buffer of that 10 to 20% of expenses going up. So my recommendation would be that have a good view of those three simple strategies: the fixed withdrawal, the variable withdrawal, the passive income withdrawals. But rather than choosing just one of them, take the best elements from those, make your own hybrid strategy. And I hope this video gives you an insight into the pros and cons of those three and our choice. Would love to hear from your thoughts, that what have you chosen, why have you chosen, what is your rationale for your withdrawal strategy, and would love to give you our responses if there is any question that you may have.